And I'm going to hand it over to Kevin and Preston to do a little intro. You're welcome to also share a community that means a lot to you. And just tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and maybe other things that might be helpful to know about you.
Hmm. Go
You
ahead,
want
Kevin.
you want me to start? Okay, I'll
Sure.
start. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Pranoto. I serve as the Associate Pastor of Social Work at Second Baptist Church in downtown Little Rock. I am a uh, dual degree alum from Baylor, so I went to Truett as well as the Garland School of Social Work. Graduated in 2016, so it is possible to graduate, and congratulations on y'all about to graduate. That's really exciting. Um, yeah, I came into social work on accident, I like to say. I started off at Truett, feeling a call to ministry. Um, I did not know anything about seminaries, but I was already attending Baylor at the time, and a lot of my mentors went to Truett to do their Master of Divinity. And so I thought, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. So I went to seminary, still didn't know what I was going to do. I thought maybe God was leading me to missions or something. I knew that I didn't want to do traditional pastoral ministry. Um, and while I was at Truett, I realized if I was going to go into missions, I do not know anything about helping people and how to best help people. I know a lot about scripture, a lot about theology, but I'm not getting the practical tools to help people who are marginalized, experiencing need, people who are experiencing oppression. So I decided to take on the MSW and be a dual degree student. And it was in Diana Garland's class. She taught the Intro to Social Work class then. And that's when my soul just realized what it had been longing for. And social work was the way that I could fulfill my call to ministry. It just clicked in that class. So that's kind of how I came into congregational social work too. I did my specialization in church social work, specializing specifically in women and the church. So I looked at feminist readings and looked at women in leadership and did my capstone project on Baptist women in ministry and how social workers can support Baptist women in churches. And yeah, since then, I've worked for organizations like the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, worked for a local nonprofit in Atlanta called Buckhead Christian Ministry, served as the executive director of Mission Oak Cliff in Dallas, Texas, where we had a food pantry, homeless services, counseling services, and adult education classes. And then from there, I transitioned to my current job in Little Rock, Arkansas, as the associate pastor of social work. I'm currently pursuing my DMin as well from Boston University, where I am hoping to bridge the church and social work through a look at my role at Second Baptist Church, because I think that it's a pretty unique role that other churches can and should replicate. I think that there should be more pastors of social work in our communities. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be with you tonight and for this conversation. My name's Preston Clegg. I'm the pastor at Second Baptist in downtown Little Rock. Um, this is the fourth church I've pastored. I'm originally from Arkansas, went to college in Arkansas and pastored a small rural church while there. Came to Truett '03 to '06, in which I did a Master's of Divinity, and I pastored in Bruceville, which is just between Waco and Temple on I-35. Um, I also pastored in Oklahoma City for 7 years, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship Church, and while there, did a doctorate of ministry at Truett. And I came to Second Baptist in 2013. So I'm about to celebrate my 13th anniversary at Second. Pastoring's in my blood. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing this. Um, Maybe try to sell something. I don't know. But Second's a really amazing church, a creative church. And given what we've seen of Kevin and the work that has sprung from Kevin, we can't imagine not having a social worker on our pastoral staff now. So I try to be a champion of social workers everywhere I go at this point. Um, yeah, I I think that's all you need to know at this point. So I'm glad to be with y'all tonight.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Preston. Could you,
Mhm.
first question is for Preston. Could you just give us a big picture overview of Second Baptist Church? What are some kind of like maybe size or demographic characteristics that might be helpful to know as we're just heading into a larger conversation about that?
Yeah, happy to. So Second Baptist is a historic congregation in Little Rock. We were begun in 1884 and have remained downtown throughout the duration of our history. Um, for the first probably half century of Second's existence, we were a big steeple, major influencer church. Governors, senators, all members of Second. Um, but a real seminal event in our church's history was the integration of Little Rock Central, something I'm sure that you've studied in your own history work. And during those days, Second stood for the integration of the Little Rock Public Schools. So, and it's documented history that about 300 people walked out of the door of Second in one Sunday because of that. So it is no small stretch to say that Second went from being a big steeple major player church to this quirkier, more social justice oriented congregation in the 50s. We've always been a church that affirmed women in ministry, at least in our history. We've got female deacons going back to the late 60s. Several female pastors were nurtured at Second through the years. We've had numerous ministries, creative ministries, ministries to AIDS victims in the late 80s when no one was doing that work. We've had multiple homeless service ministries throughout our church's history. We've done literacy work in our public schools, structured literacy work with third grade reading levels. I'm sure you're aware that there are all kinds of correlations with third grade reading levels and where a student ends up in their life. We're both a downtown and a regional church. So if you picked our church up and put us in the suburbs, it would change the DNA of our congregation in a way that's difficult to describe. Arkansas does not have many rural areas, and I think we might be the only Baptist church in the entire state that could genuinely say we're in an urban setting. So that changes who we are a little bit. But because of our unique identity and more progressive theology, people drive from 5 counties to get to Second. So we're both regional and downtown. Our membership, our active membership is pushing about 550 right now. If you showed up on any given Sunday, you would see probably 250 in our congregation. We span the age spectrum. Um, we have some racial diversity, though we pray and plan for more. We have LGBTQ people at every level of leadership of our congregation. So diversity is something that we celebrate, and I see us living into in really beautiful ways and yearn to do so even more. One of the really great things we've done since Kevin has been at Second is a downtown food pantry. I'm sure he'll tell you more about that, but that is a ministry that is increasingly becoming front and center in our congregation's life. And that has been birthed since Kevin arrived at Second. So we're historic, but also creative and progressive. We have deep roots in the Little Rock community. We're known for doing racial justice work. We are a distinctively downtown congregation. We don't have to go looking far for human need. The moment you walk out of the doors of our church, you see all kinds of human need. Um, so we're really immensely proud of our congregation's history, but we also think we have a really bright future. And having a social worker on our pastoral staff is a big reason why.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that walkthrough. And
Mhm.
I think it's so encouraging to just see how like service and solidarity with the local community has been such a DN part of the DNA of Second Baptist, which and
Yeah,
it makes sense that that would then lead to the fruit that is a social work pastor over
yeah.
time. So this next question is for Kevin. Could you give us a quick run through of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis as the pastor of social work at Second Baptist?
Yeah. So the pastor of social work role is really distinct, I think. There's so many churches who have a social worker on their staff and they might do case management or therapy or whatnot and have no pastoral responsibilities. And there are social workers who function as pastors, senior pastors, maybe a pastor of mission, and they use their social work education to inform the way that they do ministry as well. But I really get to live out both the pastor and social worker role, and that can be confusing at times because I feel like there's not a clear model for this, which is one of the reasons why I went back to school to study social work and the church. But every day looks really different. You never know who's going to show up at the doorsteps of the church, ring the buzzer to ask for a minister for help. And so I help manage the church's benevolence account. I've created the assessment and intake forms. The church didn't have that before. It actually kind of copied it from Calvary Baptist. So that was a great model to copy. Why start from scratch, right? When there's already a good model. Um, I also serve as the staff liaison to the missions committee. So the missions committee looks over all of our local mission partnerships, service opportunities for the church. I help the missions committee think about the service theologically and also what are evidence-based practices that we should be looking at and practicing within the church context. Which are the best nonprofit organizations doing the best work? How do we look at their work critically, right? Because we want to support and be good stewards of our congregation's financial resources. Like Preston said, back in October of 2024, we opened up our food pantry, seeing that there was a massive need for food. So our church is situated right in the center of three low-income housing high rises, which is why there's such a concentrated poverty just within our one block radius of the church. And we sent out surveys and had focus groups asking residents of the community what they wanted to see in their neighborhood. And they said that a food pantry within walking distance was what they needed. And so the church responded to that. And we decided to open up a client choice food pantry. For many of you, a client choice pantry might be old news, but here in Arkansas, that was groundbreaking. There was only one other client choice food pantry in Central Arkansas. So for us to open up another client choice food pantry was a big deal. And we've kind of become the model pantry for the entire state. So lots of pantries come to us to learn from us about how we operate. Um, I also participate in pastoral care, worship planning, Occasionally, I'll preach on a Sunday morning. There's a lot of things that I do. I manage our church's social media as well. Yeah, there's a lot. I'll participate in, I'll do grant writing, I'll do administrative tasks, but I'll also conduct intake assessments with people. So it's just always changing from day to day.
So many different hats. Yeah, I think I'm sure a lot of us will resonate with just how broad social work can be and how our skill sets can fit into so many different things, especially in something as dynamic as the life of a church. This next question is directly mainly towards Preston, but Kevin, please feel free to chime in. What was the process that Second Baptist went through to discern the need for a social work pastor and to create the role?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I as I told you, I've been at Second for 13 years. And when I first came to Second, I remember thinking, we are going to end homelessness, right? We're going to end hunger vulnerability in downtown Little Rock. And that was part hubris and part heart being in the right place, I think. But you do this work for long enough and you realize that oftentimes what you think you're talking about is not what you're talking about, right? And that homelessness isn't only about shelter, it's also about mental health. It's also about addictive process. It's also about networks of support. It's also about knowing resource providers. And so my hubris did not remain very long. And I quickly saw the need for more expertise than I or any of our other pastors had. I'm sure you dual degree people will appreciate this, but Greek and Scriptures 3 did not prepare me to engage someone in a mental health crisis just outside the doors of our congregation. And while Second has been a downtown church our entire existence, and we've seen a little bit of everything, and likely next Sunday we'll see a little bit more of everything, I still sensed that we needed a little more expertise and professional training than any of us had. So the dream of hiring a social worker has been in my brain, but also spoken out loud at Second for several years now. The question became, how do we do that? Because, you know, hiring a full-time pastoral staff member is a big deal for a congregation, especially these days. And also, as we do so, how should we structure it? What should we think about? One of the things I did not mention earlier about Second, because we're a downtown church and in a capital city, advocacy is a big part of our work. We are just a few blocks from City Hall. We are just a few blocks from the Arkansas State Capitol. And we have lots of people in our pews who are politically engaged in one way or another. So you couldn't ignore politics at Second for the same reason that a rural pastor couldn't ignore the rhythms of farming, right? Like it's just part of knowing your context. So ministry at Second is always both upstream in terms of advocacy and downstream in terms of ministry, benevolence, the remediation of needs. So both of those things hold hands. And I think that really helped us think about this position as we were hiring it. I noticed that a lot of churches, as Kevin said earlier, maybe contract with a social worker or have a social worker sort of adjacent to their staff, maybe part-time on their staff. But we really wanted this person to be on our pastoral staff so that we were saying structurally what we intended to say theologically, which is for us, social work is ministry. It's not ministry adjacent. It's not second cousins to ministry. It's not ministry second, or long lost friend. It is ministry. And I remember in our first interview with Kevin, him telling us that social work was born in the church. And when he said that, I thought, first of all, that's an amen on everything that we've thought about this position. And secondly, can we hire him yesterday? Because I wanted someone who saw social work as ministry. So Kevin's position was created as a pastoral staff position. Before him, we had sort of a semi-retired person on our staff who was doing uh, some work with one of the high rises next door to our congregation. Once or twice a week, he would take them grocery shopping. But we felt like that could be much, much more with someone who was trained as a social worker. So that was some of the discernment that went into the process. And I think we hired Kevin. What was it about? Not Heaven, but Kevin. What was it about 2 years ago, Kevin? Something like that.
Almost 4 years now.
4 years. Good night. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's
So
great.
that's the journey that led us to this point.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I do have a follow-up question.
Mhm.
You said a phrase that really struck me, something like what we're saying theologically ought to match what we're doing structurally, which I think is beautiful. What did that process look like of making sure what we care about theologically matched the structures in your church? Did that mean setting policies or et cetera?
Yeah, what I meant by that was how we structured the position that Kevin currently holds. That it wasn't a one-off, or there wasn't a pastoral level uh, of positions and then a social worker, but that we saw social worker as pastoral ministry. And we wanted this person to be able to preach, teach, provide pastoral care to our own people, but also those on the streets around our church and those concentrated in the housing around the church. I'll add this, I think, to better answer your question. One of the first heresies that the Christian church addressed was Gnosticism, which was sort of the idea that physical things are fleshy and not of God and sinful, and spiritual things are of God. And so real ministry is the tending of souls. But the word soul means life. And it's impossible to tend to somebody's soul without tending to their body and their mind and their mental health and their financial stability. I mean, um, I have jammed my toe on furniture that made me question the goodness of God before, right? And if you think living through cancer is only an issue of the healing of the body, and it doesn't have to do with the fortitude of spirit and soul, or that homelessness is not a spiritual issue as much as it is a political issue, or that we can benevolence our way out of problems we injusticed our way into, right? All of that is together, and God made it all. So part of what Christian ministry looks like is tending to all of that. And we see social work as a vital piece of that puzzle at Second Baptist. So we didn't want to say structurally, like, these are the people who tend to souls. And then there's Kevin over here taking care of the bodies and the streets and all that, because that's just not true. It's not true theologically. So we wanted to say structurally, in the way that we created Kevin's position, what we believed theologically, which is that God made and redeemed all things. And on Easter Sunday, this coming week, we're going to say Christ is risen. And by that, I mean not just Jesus' soul fluttered out, but that his body came out, right? So that's what I meant by that.
So good. Yes, thank you for elaborating on that. Yeah, okay, let's see. This next question is for Kevin. So given, this framework that Second Baptist discerned through and gave to you as you were hired, how have you seen your role evolve since you started in it? Were there particular kind of ebbs or flows or trial and error that you had to go through?
Yeah, like I said earlier, like there wasn't a clear roadmap as to what a pastor of social work was going to be or look like, right? There's not really a model for this. And so I was given a lot of trust and flexibility in this role. So my first year, I really was just learning the community. I was listening, I was paying attention to um, the streets around us, meeting with local stakeholders, nonprofit leaders, city officials, all that, just trying to learn the community. I've never lived in Little Rock, Arkansas before, so that was a new community for me. Never stepped foot in the state of Arkansas prior to moving here. So yeah, and then starting to identify what are the systems and the structures that need to be set in place. There were a lot of just unspoken systems or like, things that um, weren't really, there weren't policies written, there weren't intake assessment. All of these things were just done by the goodness of people's hearts, and which is great. But let's start to incorporate systems into the way that we approach the social need and the people around us. So integrating all these forms and structures. And then, of course, things as we listen to the community, have these structures set in place, we realize, oh, we have capacity to do more. We have the capacity to start a food pantry. So let's do that. Let's coordinate volunteers. Let's train volunteers. All of our volunteers go through trauma-informed training. They learn about human diversity in the orientation. That's something that we uniquely incorporate because I think that that's really important for our volunteers to know social work skills. I'm not the gatekeeper of social work knowledge. I want to share it with as many people as possible so that they can best help the people who are coming through our doors, right? So that's also something that I've tried to be more intentional about, especially over the past couple years, is training the people who are going to do it. I'm not going to be able to respond to every community need. Can I have people walk alongside of me and so that they are equipped to work alongside people who are experiencing crisis and are able to um, take the appropriate actions whenever they come across these different scenarios. So it's really exciting for me whenever I don't have to be at the food pantry because all of the volunteers got it. And they know how to handle difficult situations. And they do it in a trauma-informed way. That's really exciting, right? That's the goal. And I think that's what so there's this book that Diana Garland wrote. It's called Church Social Work. And in my studies for my dissertation, I was like, man, I should have read this book before I started because she's basically outlining like a church social worker trains the people in the church to do social work, to do the care in a evidence-based and competent way. So that's now kind of the framing that I want to incorporate in my practice at the church. And other programs will arise as well. Like right now, we're in conversation with other churches about how to best help the immigrants in our community. And so there might be a new program that we're starting sometime soon. And I love program development and program management. So all of that will just continue to evolve and arise and shape the ministries of the church and how we can respond to the needs in our community.
I love that. I think two things that really stood out to me is one, like you're transitioning from relying, like you said, on the goodness of individuals' hearts to systems that codify your values of service and caring for the vulnerable. I think that's just something that makes me really excited of like systems doesn't have to mean something sterile or something that's devoid of relationship, but it simply means that y'all can do that in a more sustainable way. And then the second thing that struck me is you talked about how training people on social work skills is like so central to church social work, but I'm like, oh, that's like discipleship. Like teaching others to do the thing that you are doing for them is like exactly what like the Bible teaches and like throughout church history. So that just struck me. So thank you for that. So while we're on that topic of the things that you're doing, you are also a field supervisor. You're supervising social work students regularly. So I'm curious, what are some kind of key social work skills or frameworks or theories that you're kind of referencing or utilizing in your work?
Yeah, so many. I mean, I feel like I use them all the time. But of course, tuning into self and tuning into the client systems, that's always key. Every day, having to check my biases, check myself, also cultivate empathy and try to um, think about what the community I'm serving is going through in this moment. Active listening, that's something that all those listening skills. Have summarizing, containment, all the things, even with church members, like we're using this all the time because church members will come to me asking for assistance on X, Y, and Z, referrals for their friend, a family member, someone that they met on the street. And so really trying to walk through them with them through that. Um, as social workers, we are steeped in systems theory. I think that is the gift that social work has to offer the world, like the one of the biggest gifts that social work has to offer the world. And so I'm always bringing systems theory into our staff meetings. What are the systems at play here? Are we thinking about this? Can we? Can we lean on this system right now and just seeing how everything is connected? It's all a web. And so just challenging our pastoral staff as well as the missions committee to think about all the different systems at play. It's not linear. It's multifaceted. Um, all the evaluation competencies, I think that is something that I also have to offer into this position is, we didn't create this food pantry just because it felt right. We actually had data to support the need for the food pantry in our community. And then after we developed the food pantry, right now I'm working with the local College of Public Health in order to create evaluation tools and assessments to see are we making a difference in the community? What can we do differently in order to be more effective and to meet the needs of the community better? So always evaluating the work that we're doing, always surveying our clients, always conducting those focus groups. That's something that I do. Feels like every week. So all those evaluation and practice tools that we learn. What is that? Competency 8 or something like that? 9 maybe. Um, yeah. So and then engaging in diversity. You know, s- to be fully competent on matters of diversity is impossible, right? But we need to try our best, I think, to know how to work with different client populations. And so that's something that I tell my interns who are at the church to always consider is Consider the age of the people that you're working with. Consider their race, their socioeconomic background. How does that alter the way that you conduct the support group for the week? Um, and even with our church members and volunteers. I've led a 6-week diversity class for a Wednesday night series before, for our church members, going through every layer of diversity, just like we do for the human diversity and social justice class. Um, so then, whenever people go to our food pantry to volunteer, or whenever someone from the community walks through our doors, we know how to appropriately address the people who are walking, our guests who are coming into the room. Yeah, so those are some of the skills and theories, competencies that I engage with.
Great. So good. Yeah, and I think it's a helpful reminder, like the congregational context is a true and valid and much needed practice context for social workers. So hopefully many of us will go into that space at some point in our futures. Okay, for our last kind of structured question, I want to shift more to some theology and some of the values that are surrounding this work. And both of y'all can answer this. What are some ways that you see your faith connected to social work and the various iterations of it? Or are there parts of scripture or theology that you feel like are particularly harmonious with social work in churches?
This might be just seasonal where my brain has been during the season of Lent, but our church has been focused on bread. It's sort of a theme throughout Scripture. And it hit me recently, the words we say every time we do communion. Jesus took the bread, he gave thanks, he broke it, and he gave it. If you read the story in John chapter 6 where Jesus feeds the multitude, they bring him loaves and fishes, and it's the same words. He takes, gives thanks, blesses, breaks, and gives. And it hit me that every time we do communion, we are forming people to do food justice work in this world, right? And it's not always named that way. It's not always brought to consciousness. Probably not frequently enough is it brought to consciousness, but it is there at that subconscious level that our God is a God who takes and blesses and breaks and gives, shares. So for me, especially in my chair as pastor, I tend to think more about the formation under the work, right? Because I think if we form people well, the work sort of finds us. Um, so what does it say about us that a table sits at the center of our sanctuary? What does that say about us as the people of God? And is there any connection between the table in the front of our sanctuary and the food pantry across the street that Kevin runs, right? Because I think there's a very short thread between those two places. And I think I jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but for me, it's just this. I want to preach the whole gospel for the whole person, for the whole world, right? And that's not just souls going to heaven when we die, but it is the transformation of all things, that God is making all things new. And that has to do with my soul and your soul, but it also has to do with hungry bellies and kids that don't have parental support and kids in the public schools that have a hard time thinking because they're hungry, or the homeless youth just outside the doors of the church. That also has to do with the kingdom of God. So I try to keep our focus on the whole gospel for the whole person, for the whole world, which I think creates a theological environment where social work is intrinsic to our work, not an addendum, a nice addendum to the work when we get there, right? So for me, it's just this resisting Gnosticism and preaching a full-bodied, incarnated gospel to people. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, so in community organizing, we are taught to put our energy where there is already movement, right? To that there is a right time to act, and that's when there's energy there. And I think that that energy, from a Christian perspective, is like, where is God working? And I think as a social worker and a pastor, like I help get to lead the church to where is God working in our community? Um, for me to start a food pantry 4 years ago, whenever I first came onto the church, was not the right time. That's not where God was moving in that moment. But October 2024, yes, like that is exactly when where God was and where God was leading us to. And so I think that as um, a pastor of social work, I help the church pay attention.
Mm.
Um, Not only paying attention to where God is, but also paying attention to, well, not only paying attention to where God is to do something, but also paying attention to where God is just in the everyday. It's so amazing for me to hear volunteers say, like, I definitely saw God in this one person who came to the food pantry. The way that they blessed me, the way that they just said a word of encouragement to me, that was God in that moment. Or to see God in the provision of resources, to see God in whatever it may be, right? And I think that that is so beautiful where so many of our volunteers also live downtown and they're like, these are my neighbors. I never realized that these were my neighbors. And so when God, or when Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself, like, I'm finally living that out. Like, I get it now. That's been really cool to witness. And at the start of every food pantry day, we have a volunteer debriefing time, and the prayer is always that we would see God in the lives of the people walking through our doors, and um, to hear how that has come into reality for so many of the people who are volunteering. That's just really, really cool to see. And not just for the people who are volunteering, people who are donating through our church, people who are just adjacent to the mission work of the church. They still get to see the fruit of that and participate in that too. So I think yeah, just seeing the inherent dignity and worth of every person through the Imago Dei, that's really, really cool.
Mm, so good. That
If I
reminds me
could
of,
add on to that ever so quickly,
yes.
we started the food pantry in October of 23, to Kevin's point, and it was a movement of the Spirit in our church. Little did we know that that would give us just enough time to get our food pantry off the ground, get the wheels and gears turning before SNAP benefits were severely cut in what is the hungriest state in all of America. The great irony in Arkansas is that we have the highest food insecurity in an agricultural heavy state. And I would venture to say that our part of downtown Little Rock is the hungriest few zip codes in the hungriest state in the United States. So God, we can see God in the daily, but we can also see God in the journey that we could not see from any given vantage point on the journey. So that's made it holy in and of itself.
So good. There's this Mary Oliver quote where she says, "I don't know what a prayer is, but I know how to pay attention." And
Mm.
so much of what y'all have just
Yeah.
shared reminds me of that. It's like the way that we interact with God is by looking in front of us and seeing God working. in those things that we might not typically think of as God's work, whether that be a system or an assessment or the person that we never thought to look twice at on the street or whatever it may be.
Mm.
Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left, but I want to open it up for any questions or reflections from anyone else.
I have a question for Kevin. As someone that's wanting to do congregational social work, and I think you have my dream job title, but like, how did you stumble upon this, or like, what were you doing, I guess, to like stay connected to the ministry world when you were doing more nonprofit work?
Yeah. It's really the friendships that I made when I was at Truett, as well as just along the way. When this position came open, I really did not consider it much because it was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I did not know anything about Little Rock and had no intention of moving to a small town in the South, right? Um, but three people sent me the job description, and those were just my friends who came across it. I know that it is a really rare job. Yeah, I don't know of any other churches who have a pastor of social work on their staff, unfortunately. But I do know churches are interested in having a pastor of social work on their staff. Whenever I go to a CBF General Assembly or talk to other pastors in the town, they're always like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like, why don't we have a pastor of social work on our staff? So I know that there is some energy there. People are curious about this position. And I think that someone just sent my job description to a church for them to replicate. And so maybe there might be a job opening sometime. But yeah, it really came down to the networking. I really encourage all of y'all to network well, to stay connected, to professors, to peers. Yeah, everyone you come across, you never know if that could be a job opportunity waiting.
I just want to say I appreciate your like the thoughtfulness that you both have put into everything that I mean, just the whole story behind the way that you serve and love your community. That so it's been really validating to what we're doing in our church. And partly I'm saying that because our church is BGCT, and when I first was applying to Baylor, I was encouraged, rather than MSW, to go the chaplaincy route. And I said no. I'm going to do the MSW. And listening to y'all today has been really valid. I mean, it's validating just the work that we're doing, but listening to you is just further validation of that. So I resonate with a lot of what you shared, particularly what you said, Preston, about the table. We do communion every Sunday, and I might steal a little bit about what you said today to add to my repertoire of what I say. But I'm just really thankful for y'all sharing today and taking time during Holy Week of all weeks to share with us today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, April. That's affirming. And I should say that we both serve a congregation that pastors us as much as we pastor them. And a lot of this would be impossible if the pews didn't believe in it too, right? So I give thanks for them as well.
Until April said that, I didn't realize how apropos this particular week in the church calendar was to talk about congregational social work.
Mhm.
I'm curious. This is a question for either of you guys, Preston or Kevin. But I've had a handful of faculty and peers reach out to me from my alma mater, Dordt University in Northwest Iowa, ask about uh, how do I learn more about congregational social work? So I'm wondering, beyond Diana R. Garland's wonderful book that Kevin already referenced, what are some other like key bits of books, articles, podcasts even that I could recommend to like interested undergrads to learn more about what congregational social work even is or what it can encompass?
Yeah, most of the resources on congregational social work are through the research at Baylor. So it really is Diana Garland's work. Gaynor Yancey and Diana Garland co-wrote a book called Congregational Social Work, and that can be helpful. It just outlines all the different kinds of congregational social work that is out there too, and they've interviewed quite a few congregational social workers for that book. Um, the NACSW, North American Association for Christians in Social Work, also, they have a lot of, they publish a volume periodically and have all these journals from Christian researchers that could be helpful too. The theology behind social work. David Sherwood has written a lot about the theology of social work and social work ethics and how to ethically integrate social work and Christianity. So that's some of the research that I found useful.
I think Kevin Pranoto's phone number is a great resource, is my recommendation.
Just got voluntold.
Yeah.
All
Dallas
right.
has my number, so.
There you go. Well, we're right at the top of the hour, so I want to start closing. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Kevin and Preston, for your time and your intention and all the words of wisdom that y'all have shared with us. I know that I'm leaving with just so many nuggets and stories that I think will fuel me along the way and just doing this work and continuing to carve out spaces in faith communities for social workers. Um, and thank y'all for being here as friends and colleagues to learn together and continue to care for our communities well. So as we close, Preston, I'm going to ask you to share a couple words or something to kind of send us off in benediction style as we head into the rest of Holy Week.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks again so much for having us. And I know Kevin just posted his email address. I'll try to do mine as well. Um, Feel free to reach out if y'all ever need anything or if we can be friends for the journey. Twice a year, our church worships outside at a proper property we own around a lake, and it's really beautiful. We did that yesterday as for Palm Sunday worship. And when we do that, we ask people to pray with their heads up and their eyes open. Instead of every head bowed, every eye closed, we say every head up, every eye open, and to pray with your senses. And to do that, yesterday, I read a very short poem that seemed to speak to so many people. And I'd like to share this with you today as a blessing for Holy Week. The poem is entitled Spring Song, and it's by Lucille Clifton, a poet from last century, African American woman. So receive this blessing today. The green of Jesus is breaking the ground, and the sweet smell of delicious Jesus is opening the house, and the dance of Jesus music has hold of the air, and the world is turning inside the body of Jesus, and the future is possible. Can I share that one more time? The green of Jesus is breaking the ground, and the sweet smell of delicious Jesus is opening the house, and the dance of Jesus music has hold of the air, and the world is turning inside the body of Jesus, and the future is possible. Amen.
Amen. Thank y'all for being here. See y'all next time.
Thank y'all. Let's be friends, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.